Friday night. Rain tapping against the window. The smell of bourbon and cedar filled my living room. The news droned in the background, something about another storm moving toward the coast. I remember thinking how quiet the house felt. Too quiet. Then the phone buzzed again. Same number. Unknown, but local. I picked it up. Dad? Her voice hit me like a knife I'd forgotten was still buried. Emily. A silence stretched long enough to taste the years between us. 6, to be exact. 6 years since she'd walked out of my life, since she'd chosen him. Since she told me she didn't need a father who lived in the past. I need to see you, she said. It's important. Important. That word always carried a price in my family. She wanted to meet the next day. Said she'd drive down from Portland. No explanations, no apologies. Just coordinates and time. Old habits die hard, so I said yes, even though my gut twisted with every word. The cafe hadn't changed. Same chipped wood tables, same smell of burnt espresso and cheap cinnamon. She was already there when I walked in, hair darker now, face sharper. A designer coat. A phone she checked every 10 seconds. And sitting across from her, like a stain in the middle of a white tablecloth, was him. Mark. The man who taught my daughter how to lie. He smiled when he saw me. Tom, he said, extending a hand like we were old friends. Good to see you. I looked at Emily. You didn't say he'd be here. He wanted to come, she said quickly. This involves both of us. That's when I should have walked out. But fathers don't walk out, even when they're the ones left behind. Mark leaned forward. We're buying a house, he said. A good one. Out near the coast. It's expensive, but a great investment. He paused. We could really use a little help with the down payment. I stared at him. Then at her. Emily couldn't meet my eyes. You came here for money, I said. No, Dad, it's not like that, she whispered. It's just a loan. We'll pay you back once the business picks up. What business? I asked. She glanced at Mark, who smiled again, too white, too rehearsed. I started consulting, he said. Helping small firms with logistics. But you know how startups are, cash flow is tricky. A drop of rain hit the window beside me and slid down slow, like the truth I'd been ignoring for years. Emily, I said quietly, you remember what happened last time I helped him? That was different, she said. You didn't understand him then. I understood enough to know you sold your car to cover his debts. Her hands trembled. She tucked them under the table. Mark leaned back, his tone smooth as oil. Look, Tom. We're family. I figured you'd want to help your daughter. We're not asking for charity, just trust. Trust. That word burned worse than the bourbon ever could. You know what trust cost me last time? I said. Half my retirement and a daughter who stopped calling. The air turned heavy. People at nearby tables pretended not to listen. Emily's eyes glistened, but she didn't speak. She didn't have to. I already knew my answer. No, I said. I won't do it again. For a moment, no one breathed. Then she looked up, voice cracking, then I guess I was right about you. She stood, grabbed her coat, and walked out. Mark followed, but not before giving me one last smirk. You'll regret this, old man. When they were gone, I sat there staring at the coffee cooling in front of me. Outside, the rain had stopped. The window reflected my face, older than I remembered. The waitress came over, hesitant. You okay, sir? I nodded, but my throat was tight. Funny thing, you can lose your child long before the world calls them dead. I finished the coffee. Bitter. Cold. Then I left a tip and walked out into the wet air, not realizing that this wasn't the end of anything. It was the start. 2 weeks passed before I heard from her again. I told myself I wouldn't pick up next time. Then I did. "Dad," Emily's voice was small, trembling. I didn't know who else to call. And just like that, my heart forgot what my head knew. She was crying. Said they'd been scammed. That Mark's business partner had disappeared with all their investment money. Said they might lose their apartment. I drove up that night. The house was worse than I expected, boxes everywhere, unpaid bills stacked on the table, dishes piled like a timeline of neglect. Emily opened the door looking hollow. Mark wasn't there. "Where is he?" I asked. "Out trying to fix things," she said, but her voice didn't sound convinced. I looked around. It wasn't just a financial mess. It was chaos. And my daughter was right in the middle of it. Over dinner, if you can call instant noodles dinner, she broke down. "He said we'd make it back in a month," she whispered. "I thought this time would be different." "You thought he'd be different," I said. She didn't argue. Just stared at her bowl. After a long pause, she said quietly, "He told me to ask you again." I set down my fork. "Ask me what?" "For a loan. Just temporary." The room fell silent. The rain outside started again, tapping against the window like it was keeping count of every bad decision. "Emily," I said, trying to stay calm. "This isn't about money anymore. You need to leave him." Her face hardened instantly. "You don't know him like I do. I know he's been draining you dry since college. You think you're better than him. You control people with guilt instead of charm. At least he makes me feel wanted." Her words hit like a slap. I stood up, took a deep breath, and walked to the door. "When you're ready to come home," I said, "you know where I am." "I am home," she said, voice shaking. I left. A week later, I got a call from my bank. "Mr. Dalton," the manager said, "I just wanted to confirm a wire transfer request you sent this morning. 25,000 to an account in Portland." My blood went cold. I didn't authorize any transfer. He hesitated. "It was done through online banking, your credentials, correct password. We caught it mid-process, so nothing's gone through yet. Someone had tried to empty my account. When I got to the bank, they showed me the login records. Different IP. Portland. Mark's address." I drove up again that night, fury fighting with dread the whole way. The rain followed me like a curse. Mark opened the door, smiling like he'd just won something. "Tom. You should have called. Where's Emily?" "In the back," he said. "You want a drink?" I stepped inside. The place smelled like whiskey and lies. Emily appeared, eyes red, holding her phone. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said. "Someone tried to drain my account." She froze. Mark's smile slipped for the first time. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "Don't," I said sharply. "The transfer came from this address." Mark laughed. "Oh, come on, you think I'd be that stupid?" "Yes," I said. "Exactly that stupid." He stepped closer. "Careful, old man." Emily stepped between us. "Stop it. Both of you." But I'd already seen what I needed, her laptop open on the counter, my name still in the browser history. She saw me notice. Her lips trembled. "Emily," I said quietly. "Tell me the truth." Tears welled up. "He said you'd never give it willingly," she whispered. "That you owed us after everything." "Owed you?" I repeated. "For what?" "For raising you. For covering his gambling debts. For watching you vanish for 6 years while I buried your mother alone." Her voice broke. You don't understand, he promised we'd fix it. Mark slammed his glass down. Enough. He's not your father anymore. He's a walking wallet who thinks guilt is love. I turned to him slowly. You think you can take my money and still sleep under my roof? He smirked. It's not your roof. It's ours. That's when I noticed the papers on the table, a deed application with my forged signature. Property transfer request. They weren't just stealing money. They were stealing my house. I felt something inside me go still, a quietness sharper than rage. Emily, I said softly, you need to leave now. I mean it. Leave him, or there won't be anything left to save. But she looked at him. Then back at me. And in that tiny hesitation, I knew. She wasn't mine anymore. I walked out without another word. Mark's laughter followed me down the stairs like broken glass. That night, I poured a drink and stared at the family photo on my mantel, the one from her high school graduation. The smile, the pride, the promise of a life not yet ruined. I turned it face down. The man in that picture was gone. And so was the daughter he'd raised. The house was too quiet when I got back. Every tick of the clock sounded like an accusation. I poured a drink, didn't taste it, poured another. For a long time, I just stared at that family photo turned face down on the mantel. I remembered the day it was taken, her laughing because the wind kept blowing her hair into my eyes. Mark wasn't in the picture. He never was. Now he was everywhere, like a stain I couldn't wash off. I sat in that silence for hours, trying to feel anger, grief, something. But all I felt was clarity. She'd crossed a line. They both had. And if there was one thing I'd learned in 60 years of living, from the army, from business, from life, it's that people who cross lines only stop when someone makes them. The next morning, I called my lawyer. James, I said, how fast can you get me everything we have on identity theft and property fraud? He hesitated. You okay, Tom? Never better, I said. Just need to understand what happens when someone forges a signature on a deed. A pause. That's a felony. Good, I said. Send me the details. Then I called an old friend from my construction days, Ray. He owed me more than one favor. Still got those cameras you used for site security? I asked. Yeah, why? Need a couple installed. Discreetly. Who are we watching? My daughter, I said. The words felt like gravel in my mouth. And the man who taught her to lie. He didn't ask any more questions. He just said, I'll bring them by tonight. By noon, I'd already changed my passwords, frozen my accounts, and set alerts on every transaction. But it wasn't enough. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about truth, about showing Emily exactly who she'd chosen to become. That evening, I drove back to their place with Ray. We parked across the street, in the dark. Lights were on inside. Through the window, I saw Mark pacing with a phone to his ear, laughing. Emily sat on the couch, blank, scrolling through something. I handed Ray one of the cameras. Get one by the window, one near the garage. I'll handle the porch. You sure about this? He asked. No, I said. But I'm done being sure. It never helped anyway. The rain had stopped but the air still smelled like it remembered. I stood on that porch, looking at the door where my daughter had once run into my arms. Now, all I saw was wood and lies. When I left, the cameras were live. By morning, I'd know everything. The next few days felt like trench warfare, quiet, deliberate, waiting. Then Ray called. You might want to see this. He sent me a clip. Mark sitting at the table, laptop open, talking to someone over video. He's panicking, Mark was saying. Once we get the house deed signed, I'll sell it fast. Old man won't know what hit him. The other man, unseen, laughed. You sure the girl's on board? Mark smirked. She's scared, but yeah. She'll do whatever I tell her. Daddy issues run deep. My chest went cold. He paused, poured himself a drink, and added, once I'm done with her, I'll disappear with the money. Maybe Mexico. That's when I stopped the video. I didn't shout. Didn't break anything. I just sat there in the dark, letting the silence soak into me until it felt like armor. For the first time, I understood something my father used to say, mercy is for men who've already won. And I hadn't won yet. I opened my laptop. Started writing. Emails to my lawyer. Copies of documents. Screenshots of the video. Everything catalogued, labeled, time-stamped. Then I wrote a message to Emily, short, careful. I need to see you. Alone. No Mark. One last time. She replied a minute later. Tomorrow. Same cafe. When I closed the laptop, the reflection of my face on the screen didn't look like me anymore. It looked older, colder, but alive in a way I hadn't been in years. The man who'd raised her had died quietly. The man she'd made tonight was something else entirely. I didn't sleep much after that video. There was work to do, legal scaffolding, technical scaffolding, timing. Revenge, I decided, needed the architecture of truth, not the heat of a shouted promise. First, the lawyer. James moved faster than I expected. We file a provisional injunction, he said over the phone, voice a calm that felt like a shield. We freeze any transfer attempts, send a cease and desist to that account, and, most importantly, we record everything under attorney-client privilege. If they forged your signature, we go criminal and civil at once. Do it, I said. And quietly. Quietly, he repeated. This kind of quiet usually makes people very loud. Good, I said. Make them loud. I hired a PI. Not some slick private eye with a fedora, someone old school, Marta, a woman who'd worked fraud cases for 20 years and smelled of cigarettes and stubbornness. She had a way of asking a question that made liars confess without knowing why. I'll tail him, she said. I'll map where the money goes. I'll find receipts. People who steal always leave a paper trail. You'll need access to their devices, I said. Or at least a way to get them to show on camera their moving funds. I have ways, she said. You'll be surprised what people do when they think no one's watching. I set up more cameras. Not just raise small porch units, license plate readers at the curb, a motion sensor by the back gate, an audio recorder in the mailbox area, legal in my state if one party consents, the consent would be mine when Emily and Mark kept talking within earshot. I felt strange doing it, at first, like a man who'd always believed in straight lines now sketching in shadows. But the world had taught me the other kind of geometry, the kind that bends. The next step was bait. You don't catch a predator by charging into the woods, you make the woods uncomfortable. I needed Mark to act, in public, in a way the authorities couldn't ignore. I needed Emily to see what he really was without me delivering a sermon. So I did something small and petty and perfect. I called a local charity I'd supported for years and arranged a community investment seminar. The flyer named Mark as a featured speaker, an expert in logistics and entrepreneurship. I knew he'd bite. Confidence loves a microphone. Pride loves an audience. When Marta told me the plan, she smiled. You're going to make him present himself in front of people who can ask questions. Not just ask questions, I said. We'll let them ask for receipts. Days became a series of tight operations. Marta followed Mark to 2 meetings, recorded conversations in which he promised investors returns he never had. Ray installed a hidden camera that caught Mark on the phone arranging a shell account and laughing about selling the old man's place. James filed the injunction paperwork and then fed it into the right hands, county clerks and a selective list of reporters who loved corruption with a human face. Not a leak, exactly, more like a controlled exposure. Emily was the hardest part. I wanted her present, awake, furious, not fooled. I didn't want to scare her, I wanted to wake her. So I planted small things where she'd notice: a receipt with Mark's handwriting slipped under her cereal box, a photo of him signing a document with my name on it left on her kitchen table, a voicemail from a supposed investor asking why Mark had misdirected funds. Each was chosen not to humiliate but to puncture denial. One night she called, voice rough. "Dad, stop. Don't do anything that will get me in trouble." "You won't be in trouble," I said. "You'll be free. But only if you let the truth land." There was a pause. Then, "I don't know if I can." "You can," I said. "And you will." The seminar day arrived. The room smelled of stale coffee and nervous air. Mark stood at the front, tie loosened, eyes scanning for validation. The crowd leaned forward like a tide. I sat near the back, a man in a sweater, invisible by design. He talked smooth, returns, scaling, exit strategies. People nodded. Someone asked about receipts. Mark deflected with a joke. "We're small," he said. "We're nimble." Then Marta stood, older woman, sharp as a tack, and asked, "Mr. Hayes, can you show us your client escrow account statements? Or at least explain where investor funds are held?" A ripple of murmurs. Mark's smile thinned. "Those are private documents," he said. "I don't reveal client information." "Do you use third-party custodians?" another voice called from the front. "I manage my own books," he said. "It's more efficient." "Efficient how?" Marta said. "Because we've had reports of missing funds tied to your name." The room shifted. People pulled out phones. Mark's face flushed, an old trick unraveling. He tried to laugh it off. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "There's nothing to worry about." At the back, someone called, "Show proof or apologize." The tone changed from curious to accusatory. A woman asked who else had lost money. Phones lit up with messages. Mark's composure cracked. After the seminar, in the parking lot, Mark stormed toward his car. I stepped forward. "You lied to them," I said, calm. "You lied to my daughter." He turned, breath ragged. "You set me up," he spat. "You think you can ruin me?" "I don't think," I said. "I know." He lunged, not a punch, but a shove. I didn't shove back. I let him stumble. People watched. He was the one who looked unhinged now, not me. Cameras caught him swearing into his phone. Marta recorded the entire thing. When I got home that night, I found an envelope on my doorstep. Inside, a photocopy of my forged deed, highlighted notes, and a single line in black marker: "Keep away from what's ours." The handwriting looked like a man's who'd practiced intimidation. I waited and listened. Then I walked to my mantel, turned that old graduation photo face up, and held it until the edges left indents in my palms. The trap wasn't just legal or public. It needed a personal finale, a moment when Emily would have nowhere left to hide but truth. So I arranged, through James, a quiet meeting at the county clerk's office under the pretense of correcting an error on the deed. An informal check, nothing official yet, but enough to be noticed. On that day, the clerk's assistant, discreet and efficient, produced a copy of the deed application with the forged signature. Marta supplied corroborating footage of Mark signing documents in a cafe while on a call. James gently placed them on the counter. Emily arrived, late, eyes hollow. Mark tried to swagger in with a confident grin, but the assistant's polite nod and the thin stack of evidence removed his stage. He faltered. People nearby watched. The papers on the counter looked like bones on a slab. She looked at the signatures, then at Mark, then at me. For a long second, no one breathed. When she finally spoke, it wasn't the pleading voice I'd heard in the past. It was small, raw, betrayed. Why? She asked him. Why would you do this? His answers were a tangle of evasions, but Marta's footage and James's calm questions cut them down, stitch by stitch. The clerk, unflappable, said, if you forged a signature, there's a process we must follow. It's not optional. Mark's face turned white in a way confession does when it's still wrapped in shame. He swore. He blamed. He threatened. The clerk called the sheriff's office to advise on next steps. Emily put her hands over her face and began to cry, not from shame for what she'd done, but from the ache of finally seeing what had been done to her. For the first time in years, she looked at me without the reflexive armor. The pause between us felt like the first honest moment we'd had in a decade. That night, Mark called me from a blocked number. You'll pay for this, he hissed. I put the phone down and poured a glass of bourbon. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired and precise. The acts I'd taken were surgical, not savage. I wanted the truth to stand naked, not buried under more lies. In the weeks that followed, the papers moved. The sheriff talked to my lawyer. Charges were discussed. A local reporter called for comment. Emily went quiet. She stopped answering Mark's texts. She left the apartment with a suitcase I never knew she'd packed. I watched her go from across the street, camera trained, heart oddly heavy as a truth I'd forced into daylight settled between us. The county moved faster than I expected. A month after the seminar, a hearing date appeared on the docket, property fraud review, preliminary evidence presentation. Mark filed a counterclaim, of course, claimed I had transferred ownership willingly, that age and memory issues made me confused. He underestimated how sharp memory becomes when it's carved by betrayal. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled, smelling faintly of old paper and disinfectant. Emily sat in the back, pale, hands knotted in her lap. She hadn't spoken to me since that day at the clerk's office, but she was there, and that mattered. Mark entered like a man who'd rehearsed swagger. Expensive suit, new haircut, same hollow grin. When he caught my eye, he whispered, "Old men break easy." I smiled. So do cheap pens. The judge called order. James presented the exhibits, the forged deed, the camera footage, the seminar transcript, screenshots of the attempted bank transfer. Each landed like a nail. Mark's lawyer objected, postured, cited circumstantial context. Then Marta took the stand. Her voice was calm, dry as sandpaper. I obtained these recordings under lawful consent, she said. They show Mr. Hayes discussing the sale of property not in his name. On the monitor, Mark's own voice filled the room, "Once I'm done with her, I'll disappear with the money." The silence that followed wasn't ordinary silence, it was judgment taking its first breath. The judge leaned back, face unreadable. "Mr. Hayes," he said, "would you like to explain this recording?" Mark's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That's taken out of context." "What's the context?" the judge asked, "for planning to defraud your father-in-law?" No answer. Emily started crying quietly. The sound cut through me worse than any insult. Part of me wanted to tell the judge to stop, to end it, to spare her the humiliation. But mercy was the luxury that built the cage we were all in. When the judge recessed, Mark turned toward me, voice low. "You think this ends here? I can ruin her name." I leaned in just enough for only him to hear. "You already did," I said. "Now it's my turn to fix it." Outside, reporters waited. The story had leaked, local investor faces fraud charges tied to family property scheme. Flashes went off as Mark pushed past them, shouting about slander. Emily stood frozen on the steps, people swirling around her. She whispered, "Dad, I didn't know." "I know," I said. "Now everyone does." She nodded, wiped her eyes, and walked toward the parking lot. For the first time, she didn't look lost, just empty, the way ground looks after a fire. Weeks blurred into paperwork and hearings. Mark's accounts froze. Investors withdrew. The business collapsed overnight. He pled down to avoid prison but lost everything: license, reputation, house. The last time I saw him, he was walking out of the courthouse with a single suitcase and a face like a man who'd finally met himself. He glanced at me. "You satisfied?" I thought about it. "No," I said. "But I'm done." Emily came to see me a month later. No makeup, no armor. She carried a small box, the family photo I'd turned face down. "I think this belongs here," she said, placing it back on the mantel. We stood there a long time, saying nothing. Then she asked, "Was it worth it?" I looked at the photo. Truth always is. Revenge, only sometimes. She smiled faintly, tears balanced on her lashes. "I'm sorry." "I know," I said. "That's why it hurts less than it should." That night I sat on the porch, bourbon in hand, the Oregon air thick with salt and rain. From the distance came the faint hum of traffic, ordinary life resuming its rhythm. Justice had been served, not loudly, not with fireworks, but with paperwork and patience, the way real justice often is. I thought about mercy again. Maybe next time, I'd find some. But not this time. When I closed my eyes, I could still hear Emily's voice at the cafe. "Then I guess I was right about you." Maybe she had been. Because she was wrong about him, and that was enough. It's strange how quiet peace sounds. Not triumphant. Not pure. Just, still. Months have passed. The legal dust settled like snow on everything. The house is mine again, technically, at least. I fixed the loose railing on the porch last week, the one Emily used to swing on when she was little. I didn't realize how much I'd missed the sound of wood creaking under her laughter. She calls sometimes. Short conversations, gentle ones. We don't talk about Mark or courtrooms. We talk about weather, work, recipes her mother used to make. Every word feels like rebuilding a bridge with splinters still sticking out. But it holds. One evening she sent me a picture, a small apartment by the coast, a window full of light. Starting over, she wrote. No emojis. Just that. I printed the photo and pinned it on the fridge. Sometimes I still dream of the night I turned that family photo face down. In the dream, I turn it back up, but the glass is cracked. That's okay. Some things are supposed to stay cracked, so the light knows where to get in. Revenge didn't fix anything. It just stopped the bleeding. But truth let me breathe again. Now, when the rain hits the windows, I make coffee instead of bourbon. I watch the ocean from the porch, counting waves instead of regrets. Maybe that's what forgiveness really is, not letting someone back in, but letting yourself step out. The sky tonight is the color of old silver. The wind smells like cedar and sea salt. I close my eyes and whisper a name I still love, not because she deserves it, but because I do. Good night, Emily. And for the first time in years, it feels like peace answers back. If this story spoke to you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can continue the journey by clicking the box on the left. Thank you for being here.